Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi.
Beautiful. It's awesome to see some familiar faces, by the way. I'll get it started. So thank you, Chairs McCrory and Sanchez, and to the rest of the esteemed Connecticut Education Committee for having this hearing. And I want to remark, again, it truly is wonderful to see some familiar faces and some names. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Camilo Lemos, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Excellence Community Schools, most locally recognized by our flagship Connecticut school, Stanford Excellence. I'm here to speak in support of two items on today's agenda, Senate Bill 229 and House Bill 5283. Senate Bill 229 seeks to change the process for approving a state charter school, which currently is a drawn-out process that involves 3 separate entities and multiple steps in getting a charter approved and funded. In broad terms, a charter application is defined by the operator filing an application with the State Board of Ed, which then gets reviewed, and a public hearing is held with local and regional boards of education making comments, with a vote on granting an initial certificate of approval for the charter occurring after by the State Board of Education. The State Board of Ed submits a copy of the initial certificate of approval and a summary of the comments made at the public hearing to the legislators' education and appropriations committees, which can choose to appropriate funds to the State Department of Education. It's only at the junction of funds being appropriated upon which this charter certificate of approval becomes effective. This means that for the duration of the time from the charter's initial certificate of approval to the appropriation of funding from the education and appropriations committees, some schools are receiving zero cash flow from the state and could become financially strained in their first years of operation due to small but unforeseen issues like heating problems or leaky pipes, all while waiting for the end of session to receive funding from the General Assembly. Senate Bill 229 seeks to empower the State Board of Education to directly approve charter schools and have the State Department of Education request from the governor an approval of funding for charter schools in his or her annual budget, as well as creating a non-lapsing fund set aside for state and local charters. This account would eliminate the issue of first-year funding, as money in that fund would be expended by the Commissioner of Education for the purpose of providing grants to a local or state charter school that has been granted an initial certificate for approval for a charter in the fiscal year immediately following the fiscal year in which such initial certificate for approval for a charter was granted. Mouthful, I know. House Bill 5283, an act concerning the education cost-sharing grant formula and the funding of other education programs, is a wide and encompassing bill that has several components that I'm not attempting to diminish by shortening down to several sentences, but I feel obligated to speak on the sections in the short time I have left. And to note that the basis of HB 5283 is implementing a student-centered funding model. Currently, there's a $725 million funding gap between higher need districts, which are defined by having 25% or more of the scholars in that district receiving free or reduced lunch, and all other districts in Connecticut. Section 1 of 5283 would provide full funding of the ECS formula for underfunded districts receiving an increase in fiscal year 2025 rather than fiscal year 2028, while maintaining the ECS phase-out schedule for overfunded districts receiving a decrease in funds through fiscal year 2030. While student-centered funding alone will not bridge that 700.
Please summarize, thank you.
Got you. Last sentence. It will reduce the inequities in funding for Connecticut scholars. If there's any questions, I will be more than willing to take them.
Any questions for the young man who's presenting?